All right. Hello. Good afternoon. Thanks for being here for another Villages talk. We have Ben, hacker, content creator, and all-around great guy. He's going to be talking to us today about scopes, and maybe they matter, maybe they don't. But anyways, I'm going to hand it over to Ben. A quick round of applause.
All right, can you guys hear me okay? Everyone hear me? Cool. All right, let's talk about why hackers don't care about scope. But before we jump into it, quick little intro about me. I'm a hacker and content creator. Before this, I worked at a bug bounty platform, HackerOne. That's when I learned a lot about bug bounties. I also worked as an exec for security and research. I've helped identify hundreds of bugs, thousands of bugs, over 100 bug bounty programs. And some of the companies I've hacked onto are Apple, Lyft, Amazon, Google, the Department of Defense, and a couple more, but just those are to give you some big names that I've been a part of. About this talk, just out of curiosity, how many here are involved in a bug bounty program or managing a bug bounty program? You're doing a bug bounty platform maybe. I've seen a lot of people spin up bug bounty programs more and more. It's becoming very popular for a lot of security teams to spin up their bug bounty programs. It's a way to secure your products pretty much, but I see a lack of engagement and a lack of communicating with your hackers and also getting the most out of your bug bounty program. So we're gonna talk about it, but the inspiration from this talk came from this poster. This is a KiwiCon 2009 poster that Jason Haddix posted this actually. I can't take the credits for it. He's actually selling these on his site if you wanna grab one, but he posted that, and if you can't read it, I made sure I communicated properly to you that hackers don't care about a lot of things, and scope is one of them. Your project scope, we don't care about. If it's a legacy system, we don't care about. If it's if it's a proof of concept, still don't care about it. But there's a lot of different things. Internal systems, we don't care. You should care about it. But the point is, you can put all these limitations to your bug bounty program or your VDPs, but guess what? We still don't care about any of these, and you shouldn't either. And we'll talk about some of that more. So the talk so far, what I've envisioned, how do I present this thing and how do I break it down? We're gonna go between programs and hackers. We're gonna talk about why as a program you should be doing the bug bounty programs differently, and then how that helps with the hackers and why hackers like me would wanna participate in your programs more and more if you take some of my advice back to your stakeholders. So there is the traditional approach of doing a bug bounty program. You pick your bug bounty platform, because you want to get, I feel like this is a lot of your OKRs for a bug bounty program if you're running one, right? You want to get some vulnerabilities, you want to secure your products, you want to secure your customers' data, and you want to hit your internal goals and metrics that you have, right? Do we agree? But then you give us this. You give us a single scope of www.site.com, right? And I want to ask you, is this really what you want to get out of a program by just giving us this one piece of scope? You're giving us a website, and a lot of times this www site has no functionality. It's talking to a bunch of different systems, but we as hackers can't do anything about it because you gave us a scope that we have to work with. And a lot of times if we work with that scope, or if we go out of scope, there is punishments that come with it. Either we don't get paid for the bounty, the platforms get pissed at us, or you don't like the fact that we went out of scope. And goes back to my whole we don't care about scope thing, which we'll address in a bit. But outside of not working with hackers, you are ignoring a bunch of different things that work in the background of that main core application, right? Your app.site.com, your main application that you guys are putting into your program, it has a DNS server, it has a DNS zone that may be communicating with. It has a dev site, has a dev API, has a dev environment, whatever that looks like for your infrastructure. There's a bunch of APIs. A lot of times I see bug bounty programs put their app in there, but then 90% of it runs from an API that is not put in the scope. Maybe you forgot about it, or maybe you don't want it to be in scope for some reason, but a lot of the data is being pulled in and out of an API. And then you have your internal development tools. You have your Jenkins, whatever is going into your integration process and all these toolings. You're completely ignoring it if it's being exposed to the outside world because you want to put a scope and limitation for your bug bounty program. So the goal of this talk is to give you an idea or give you some sort of a reason to go back to your orgs and say, hey, we want to go from that to the second one when everything we do as a bug bounty program is in scope, and I did that as one of my jobs at one of the companies that I worked for. That was our goal. They gave me that program, and we slowly added more assets, we slowly added more hackers, and at some point, everything the company owned was in scope. And I think that should be, in short, how you run a bug bounty program. And you're paying a ton of money to these platforms, or whoever is running your bug bounty program, you're spending a lot of money that's coming out of your budget, so you may as well get your money's worth. And the other part of it is like, let's keep it honest, you're gonna get owned. Cyber criminals are gonna go after your infrastructure. They will definitely not care about your scope. No cyber criminal is gonna go to your bug bounty program and say, hey guys, we're not touching the system. The bug bounty program says it's legacy, we should stay away from it. They're gonna do the opposite. If it's legacy, it's better for them because there's probably vulnerable code in there that you don't care to maintain or fix. And they don't care how they're gonna get into your system, whether it's your third-party services, they want the PII, and they want your infrastructures, right? That's what cyber criminals want to get into. Depending on, regardless of what the goal is, they're gonna do that. It's gonna happen whether you like it or not. And you have a bug bounty program that could do that for you. And before you all tell me we don't want it, we don't need it, if we don't need bug bounty hunters or red teamers, people that are doing the same thing as adversaries or cyber criminals, as an industry, we wouldn't be creating this. This wouldn't exist, and external attack surface management wouldn't exist as an industry if we didn't need something that could, mimic the adversaries, the same tooling and the continuous monitoring that they do, right? So as an industry, we created this monster. It is last year at RSA, there wasn't a single vendor that I walked by that wasn't selling ASM, let alone EASM, which is the external attack surface management, right? So you can't tell me that you don't need it, because if you don't need it, then why does your company have this? Why are you spending contracts to, spend this on with other companies that are doing this? And the other part of the ESM thing is, a lot of these companies, the asset nodes, let's see, Hadrian that I worked at, there are a couple ones that got acquired recently. Guess who created them? Bug bounty hunters. A good portion of them were created by bug bounty hunters. They took their bug bounty approach, put it in an infrastructure, they automated it, and they're now selling it to you. They're making bounties on the side, and then they're selling it to enterprise, and they're making money. So we created EASM as an industry because we didn't want to, open up our scope or work with hackers. Even with a pen test, the scopes are limited sometimes. So I feel like we need to do more as an industry, whether it's bug bounty or not. So if you can't beat them, join them. That's the best thing the way I can say it is because we have to do something, and bug bounties isn't the solution, but you are spending money with bug bounties, so you may as well leverage your bug bounty and do the same thing. So we're gonna talk about the hacker's perspective of this. I think I'm doing okay with time. So now we're gonna take a look at the hacker's perspective of how it works. So work with hackers, and I wanted to kind of address hackers do care. It's not that we don't care about things, but hackers do care about having a bug bounty program that's fun. They want to find a program that's engaging. They want to work with them. They want a wide or wild card scope. It doesn't have to be everything you own, but it could be something that's big enough. If your product's big enough, Salesforce is a huge company. Their product Salesforce alone is huge. Airbnb was a big one. They did their core app, and then eventually put everything in scope. But we want to hack on things that we can dedicate hours to or days to instead of hours. So we want to also identify your infrastructure. A lot of times, I've talked to a lot of engineers when I submit a vulnerability, and they go, how do you know this belongs to us? So it tells me that you don't even know these sites belong to you, and that's, again, why we have ASM as an industry. But we can do that thing for you. We can create this ecosystem of us identifying your assets and reporting vulnerabilities within them. Of course, we want to publish our research. We want to make the internet secure, at least most of us do. We care about bounties, and it just all goes down to just wanting to own your stuff as a company. And the way we do it is, I personally look at this and I go, when I'm doing a bug bounty program, the immediate question that I ask myself is, how can I affect this company's users' data or the infrastructure? Because if I get infrastructure access, then I get PII. If I dump PII in any way, then I've already got my job is done, right? So the first question that a lot of hackers who are coming from how do I mimic an adversary approach to bug bounties is this in some aspect. This is how I look at it. This is what I think, at least. So I ask myself, how do I do that? And that's very difficult to do when you give me this, because I can't scope out your internal sites. You have an internal.site.com that I can't touch because it's out of scope. I can't touch your dev sites that may have more functionalities. It could be open to vulnerabilities because you're giving me this. So we want to stay away from it. And I did a little bit of research, and we can look at, I think this is Yahoo. Let me look at my notes. It's Yahoo, PayPal, Airbnb in that order. I know that they've been around for years, but they all have a lot of bounties paid. And do you know what they all have in common? Besides the security budget that they have that's huge, they also have huge scopes. The bigger companies that I've seen that are successful, they're taking out the risk of saying, hey, we want you to hack on everything we own. Airbnb as an infrastructure is not a huge infrastructure. They have a lot of different acquisitions that has happened over the years. But when Airbnb launched their program 5 years ago, they gave us everything that they owned, even though it was small, but it made it a challenge for me to identify more places to hack on because they gave us an open canvas of doing what we want. As hackers, we did whatever we wanted to. So sometimes I found vulnerabilities in the core app. Sometimes I found stuff that was in their API. And sometimes I found stuff that was leaked on GitHub. So there was just, I could pick what side of this company do I want to hack into or what part do I want to attack. And by choice, I have better options doing that for a big company versus a company that's giving me this one. So I can't do a lot of the work that I want to on this side. So it's not huge scopes, it's just they have more engagement. One of the things they have in common is you'll see a lot of the top hackers are on these programs because of the wide scope, because they're adding more assets over time, and the increased bounty budget over time. Once you have a lot of these bugs coming, it's a justification for you to go to your stakeholders and say, hey, we're getting good vulns, can we get more budget to pay the hackers and find things? And honestly, this is not on the part of the talk, but just talking to a couple of people outside, I think we should also step away from having bug bounties be in the AppSec side and give it to the red teamers so they can see how far that could have gone. Could that RC in the site go elevate access to your internal network and that kind of stuff? So it's just, I feel like overall with bug bounty, you have this proof of concept that you're going to spend money on. The government's going to make it a thing for every company eventually to have a VDP, whether we like it or not. So why not make the most out of it and get better coverage by adding things over time? So we want to go from that, and oh, I broke it. That one works, okay. So this one works.
It's back.
Oh, it's back, perfect. So if you're giving me this, what you're gonna miss out on is like cool bugs like this. These are just me browsing on HackerOne. These are things that is not even on your infrastructure. This is hosted on GitHub. This is hosted on a random website that you posted some notes on. This is hosted on your third-party services or your JavaScript files that people come across. You miss these things like your public Jenkins instances, your heap dumps that are out there for your APIs, all these different cool vulns and research that could come out of your bug bounty program that you're missing out on just because you want to be on the safe side of a bug bounty program because the legal teams don't want to deal with it or because your stakeholders don't want to be doing the work to go up to a bigger bug bounty program. So I don't have a solution. I have a solution slide, but I don't have a solution for you. I have a suggestion that I can propose because the solution is up to you and your team to figure out how fast and how quick you can put more things in scope. But we wanted to look at two things. With bug bounties, you don't get to do the social engineering and phishing, right? That's the thing that bug bounties can do. I know that most companies think the way they get owned is through phishing, which web is also, I think, high up there with how companies are getting owned nowadays. But the two things is cybercriminals are going to do the same thing. We can't do phishing and social engineering, but we can do the web stuff. But also the similar tooling and the approach is very similar. A lot of the good hackers that you look at, they come up from an adversary perspective and they try to do that with their bug bounty hunting. And the difference is one's gonna play by the rule and the other one's gonna quote unquote sell your stuff on the dark web. And you have to pick one or the other. So the number one thing is I think from bug bounty platforms, I've seen a huge shift from just sales to also educating people why they should do a bug bounty program. But also as people that are running these bug bounty programs, I think we need to, as an industry, for bug bounty industry, create something for these legal teams that are going to be okay with wanting to work with companies that are out there in the world, that it's not in the US, it's not Europe. I think the biggest scary thing is I don't want to work with this hacker out in this country. And I think there's education that needs to be done, that these platforms are doing background checks, they have done some ID verification, and so on. So I think there's a lot of education that could go there. And honestly, if you are doing a bug bounty program, I've seen this mistake happen over time a lot. I see less and less of this happening now with the platforms being around. that they do the walk, crawl approach, and then you crawl, walk, and then running approach. You don't go all in and put everything in the scope, but you make it a goal. You say, hey, we're gonna launch a bug bounty program, and within a year, within 2 years, we're gonna add more and more to our scope, and just having that goal and having that buy-in throughout these years, it's gonna push you to wanna do those things. So do them in phases. Your first quarter or your first 2 quarters of bug bounty should be private. It should be your main core asset. I understand that's the meat of your product, but eventually after the first quarter and second quarter, when the submissions start to die down, you want to go to the next phase of adding more and more, maybe bundle them all together. So in this next phase, you have a bundle of new domains, and then eventually you work up the courage to put everything in the scope of your bug bounty program. And then the last one is be more lenient with your scope. It's okay if hackers go out of scope on accident. I'm not saying reward them, but also don't punish them. Don't go to the bug bounty platforms and say, hey, this hacker went out of scope, especially if you're gonna fix a vulnerability, if you're getting value out of it. Make it more welcoming without, I get that you don't want people to go out of scope. Set those rules up, but set a communication for hackers to be able to ask you, hey, I found this asset interesting. I think I can find this vulnerability. Can I test this? I think that alone is a big thing. But also putting some language around saying, hey, if you find something that could directly affect our network, our infrastructure, or our users without hitting a third party, we'll be happy to hear from it and maybe award it. But just the language you use is different, saying, hey, we're open to it versus putting the finger up and saying, no, we don't want to work with you, because it's just, it's not gonna take us away from going from a single scope to a wildcard thing, and then hackers aren't gonna engage with you if they get punished. Hackers talk to each other, so if one hacker is getting banned from a platform or a program, it just becomes a thing that most hackers are gonna be turned off by it. So again, I'm gonna put this slide up one more time. We don't want the first one, we want more of the bottom one. I think I speak for all bug bounty hunters when I say the second one is the one we want. And yeah, that's it. If you wanna come and meet us and talk to us, I'll be at the Bug Bounty Village all day tomorrow. We're doing a web hacking workshop with Jason Haddix. I'm hosting the HomCon June 16th, and I'm also doing a training if you want to do more bug bounty and web hacking. And if you want to get in touch with me, there's my Twitter, social media, and also my email as well. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Check.
I could ask it direct, but I guess in terms of getting that feedback on bounty programs from hackers, like what's successful, what's not, where do you recommend doing that? Like through like Twitter, Bug Bounty Forum, or like those type of channels, or is there some other thing?
As a founder of Bug Bounty Forum, I would say don't do it on Bug Bounty Forum.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the wrong place to ask, but I would say ask your researchers that are sending stuff to you.
Okay.
When you're awarding someone, if you put a link and says, hey, we want, either a link or a question of saying, hey, can you answer these questions for us? We'd appreciate it. I think talking to the people that are submitting to you is more valuable than on Twitter.
Yep.
Because you can also get the people that don't like to do bug bounties still chime in, or the elites that are in the bug bounty community chime in. So directly from your hackers, I know both of the big platforms have direct communication to your hackers. You can select, hey, hackers who have submitted a bug to me, or hackers that have done X. Send them a survey, but the report itself, I think, is the best way to ask them, like, hey, we're curious, what can we do to engage you more? Whether they need credentials, they need, some account type or something that could give you direct feedback for it.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
We have time for more.
With the, I guess, current advent of generative AI, how it's just blossomed and mushroomed, how has that affected the things that you're into now? Has it made things easier? Has it made it more difficult? Or
the things that I'm into as a content creator has made it easier, because I can rely on AI to help me create more content easily. You can have I have my labs created by AI sometimes, like ChatGPT, but I don't think it's gonna affect the triage part of it just yet. Maybe there's some machine learning that could affect it. I know a lot of these bug bounty platforms use machine learning to a way, but I'm one of the people that's gonna be resistant to saying AI is very far from taking over bug bounty, both from a hacker perspective or triage of bug bounty platforms in general. Okay. I know you can write better reports using ChatGPT, honestly, but.
Very intriguing talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just like hackers, VP of engineering, engineering managers, directors, they also don't care about scope.
Good to hear.
Yeah, all they care is, can I ship this feature or product securely or not? But as a product security engineer, we do care about scope because that kind of keeps us on track. So what are your views on that?
I think it depends on org to org, but at the end of the day, when it comes to the bug bounties, you can put a scope on it. But whether you like as a team having a scope or not, it's not going to matter with the adversaries. It's not going to matter for cyber criminals. So instead of working against the people that want to help you, I think just having the leniency of being open to getting reports is different than not having that. A lot of times what I see is they're giving you the no, don't go out of scope, and then when you go out of scope, you get an email from the support team or the team that are on the platform side saying, hey, we went out of scope, and we tell you not to go out of scope. So I think it's a leniency of being open to accept something that may be out of your scope because it benefits you.
Understood. What do you think about scope creep?
About what?
About scope creep.
About scope creep, it depends. I mean, that's a broad term, but I can't. That's a loaded question, I feel like.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. One more.
Hey, Ben, I have a question for you. So I think obviously bountiers can make more money sometimes if they go out of scope, but there's got to be a line at some point, right? A line where if you cross it, you're like borderline criminal, like
Yeah.
stealing data you shouldn't access. Where is that line for you?
My line is if I can exploit something, especially out of scope, I report it and I tell them like, hey, I could do this thing. Do I have permission to go in through it and do it? I think I draw the line of like, I know I went out of scope, but I'm not going to, I don't ask for money. There was recent news of someone saying, hey, we wanted to help you with your product, but bounty, please. That's the draw. I don't ask for bounty because when you ask for money, you may not be extorting the company, but you knew what you were doing was wrong going out of scope. So it's just, I found something, I say, this is what I found, this is what I can do with it. Can I do more? A lot of times I'm lucky enough to know people at the companies, but a lot of people don't have that connection. So just having the communication, putting an email that says, hey, email us if you have questions helps.
Thank you.
All right. Going once, going twice. All right, another round of applause.